Welcome to Breathe, a weekly audio podcast presented by Breath of Life. And now, here's the host, Pastor Debleaire Snell, and co-host David Person.
Welcome to Breathe. I'm David Person, and I'm the co-host of this podcast that is presented by the Breath of Life television ministry. And of course, you know the host is the speaker director of Breath of Life. He's also the senior pastor of the Oakwood University Church, Pastor Debleaire Snell. And of course, we're always joined by Pastor Kirk Nugent, who is the media pastor at Oakwood University Church, and he is a media guru, at least that's what I call him, media guru for the Breath of Life television ministry. Well, last week we started a really interesting, compelling, fascinating, and very candid conversation with Pastor John Nixon and his wife April about love, sex, and marriage. And this is part of our Love Month series that we've been doing. And I say Love Month, we've actually been doing it now, having this conversation about love over the course of a couple of months. I guess October, I think, is when we started it. And we're continuing it on into November now. And hope that you are sticking with us and enjoying it. If you listened or downloaded last week's episode, I'm sure that you found it fascinating and informative. And I guarantee you, it will be no less informative today as we continue our conversation with April and John Nixon.
In our marriages, we don't talk about sex.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually sit down and say, hey, you know what I really would like in the bedroom? Mm-hmm. I really would like if you touched me here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if you touched me like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you what I actually want because, you know, you understand what I'm saying?
Right,
and
right,
I think
right.
you and also giving our partner permission to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me what it is that you ask that question.
Mercy.
Then it gives them the permission to, I can actually say, they're not going to be mad at me if I say, you know, I'm really not enjoying it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why.
Wow.
You know, we don't have those conversations. And so it ends up being that the physical can't feed the spiritual because the physical has not, there's shame there.
Wow. That's a heavy statement.
A big part.
Yeah.
It is. And you know, I wanted us to, I'm glad we're here now because I wanted us to go back to shame and sort of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, from your standpoint, what's the root of that? You know, is it that you talked about talking to 8th graders and their shock. So do you think it's something that's rooted in childhood? Is it something that's taught? Or is it something that is intuitive? Do we have sort of an intuitive sense of shame when it comes to sexual things and sexual pleasure?
We definitely have an intuitive sense of shame.
Oh, there's no
just
question.
because, you know, I mean, Adam and Eve right away
Yeah.
Yep.
felt
As soon
shame.
as they sinned,
Yep.
they felt shame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's just there. But
So is that, okay,
instead
now,
of trying to,
I'm sorry, let me just, because that's an interesting, when you reference Adam and Eve, I know the book of Genesis says that there's shame. They discovered they were naked and they were ashamed. And I think that's what you're referencing.
And before that, it says that the man and his wife were naked and had no shame. And the only difference between those two statements was sin.
Yep.
Right?
Wow.
So before sin, there was no shame. Moses felt like he had to include that.
Yep.
He said, hey, look, guys, they were actually naked and didn't feel any shame.
Yep.
Right.
So they were supposed to sort of connect that. And then sin comes in, and as soon as they find out they're naked, they clothe themselves
Immediately.
to hide their shame. So shame came in immediately because of sin. So it's kind of like a byproduct of that. So we end up now having to teach our children out of that. That's what you have to do.
Okay,
so you don't teach them something deliberate about sex and where it comes from or anything like that. What naturally happens is the shame part takes over, and that's what dominates. So it's really our silence that allows our children and our grown adults as adults to continue in shame.
Now, I remember when my son was a baby, he didn't have any shame about being naked, right?
Yeah.
Zero.
But somewhere along the way that happens, right? Because I mean, little kids will run around the house naked, right?
Yeah.
But then something happens. What is it that happens that engenders shame?
I think they see us. I think we demonstrate it in ways that we don't have to even sort of articulate.
Yeah.
Wow. The first time you react to your son. So first of all, your kid's a kid, right? He's 2. He's running around. He's so cute, right? You let him do it every day, every night. When it's time for bath time, he gets out of the bath. He runs around. It's no problem. No issue. But the moment company comes over, and he runs out of the back room and he runs to the living room naked, you react very differently. Like, no, what are you doing? And you run him back. You clothe him and bring him back out. So there's something. You
might even say, you can't go out in front of people like that.
Correct. There's an automatic sort of thing. And of course, that's appropriate, right? You don't want your kids just walking around naked. You don't want them thinking it's okay to walk around naked in public. So you are basically showing them in that situation an appropriate level of shame. We actually say sometimes you have no shame, and that's a negative thing.
Yeah, we do.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Don't you have no
shame?
Yeah. So those are the appropriate level of shame when you're in society. So we should have that. But I think our lack of our silence on the issue of sexual things makes it so that the world now dominates the conversation.
Wow.
The things that our children hear about sex or see or whatever are all of the things that are so easy for them to get to on their phones, their iPads, whatever. Back in the day, it was somebody having to bring a magazine to school. Now you don't have to do that. Just accidentally type in the wrong thing, which, by the way, they say is where most kids trip up and accidentally end up on pornography. It's having a device too young, trying to type in a thing, ending up on the wrong site, and boom, they're seeing it.
There it is.
So now the way that they are being taught is from that perspective. Very rarely is the parent coming and sitting them down and talking about how it was in Genesis, how God designed it from the beginning, and how, this is for husband and wife as a gift for them and all that kind of stuff. I think you have to actually be deliberate about what you're teaching them in order for them to grow up with this idea that when I get married, I'm supposed to be naked with my wife or my husband and have no shame.
And it's funny because even because you would assume that that idea of shame comes from a Judeo-Christian construct.
Right.
But even those who are mentored in sexual things from the world, I remember before we really developed roots in the church, so when you're around cousins and uncles, they call it doing the nasty. You know what I'm saying?
Very true.
So
Very true. That's right.
Everything that the imagery, the conversation, basically put it in that context. It had this slimy, grimy, but yet joyful kind of connection to it. And so I think that, both our silence along with just kind of very poor instruction, apart from scripture, kind of adds that shame element to it. It's funny because even with certain, so I just think it has a lot of layers where the enemy has just really convoluted the whole concept of it.
Wow.
Yes.
He's actually kind of commandeered it.
Yeah.
And so April's 8th graders are demonstrating that they are giving credit to the devil for creating something, and he can't even create. The devil can't create anything. All he does is pervert what God creates. But he's done such a good job of perverting this, and now we give him credit. This is where it came from. I ask people sometimes, why they think God allowed us to have sex, and sometimes the answer is similar to why God allowed the children of Israel to eat meat. In the wilderness because of their sinful inability to control themselves. So now I think God's creation of sex, or our ability to have sex, is like his permissive will. But that wasn't. That was God's original will
design.
For Adam and Eve in the garden. This is not because of sin. He's switching stuff up. No.
And it's so funny because you
perverted this thing that he created.
You get so messed up. So there's a statement, I think, in Adventist Home where one of our pioneers of our church, Ellen White, she talks about how the married bedchamber is a place where angels love to dwell. Right. So now,
surround the bed.
Again, as you shift your thinking, right, from doing the nasty, angels in the bedroom, you're like, what do I want? You know what I'm saying? You're kind of like, because you
tell
just
them angels to go.
Like what you're describing is just like I don't want my guardian angel there.
I don't need you for this.
Right.
I got this.
But man, as this holy God construct that is just absolutely revolutionary to somebody who is hearing what you're saying today, because for whatever reason we'll have conversations about righteousness and parenting, but we essentially kind of outsource this critical conversation about sex, and we allow the world to do it. I think you talked about even upbringing. Like we don't even allow our kids to call their private parts by their right name.
Names,
You apply a more delicate name to it. Yeah. When in fact, one of my favorite writers talks about one of the kids' earliest lessons should be, to help them understand their anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
So we kind of apply shame by renaming certain parts.
Right.
Your flour and your hot dog and different things like that. That's your hot dog.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, April. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, growing up, I did not hear any conversation or a sermon or anything about sex from the pulpit.
Yeah.
What we did hear was in Sabbath school and at school. I remember at Pine Forge, it was sex. If you have sex, you'll get pregnant, or you will get a disease. So it was never talked about in a positive way. And I think, and somebody asked us recently, well, how do we change that? How do we change that? If this is where our church has been, I said it can start with you in your home with your children.
That's it.
Yeah.
It can start right there. We have got to not be afraid to talk to our kids about it from the Bible.
From the Bible.
At a young age.
Yep.
And that's what we're afraid of too.
Yeah.
So where do you start?
Start there.
So what passage would you suggest?
Oh man, several.
Yeah.
So I would start right in the beginning in the garden.
Okay.
Because see, here's the thing, right? Your kids see things every day, right? They're watching, they're observing. And what you're doing when you open Genesis is you're saying, there was a time when things weren't like this. Here was what God originally designed. And you start talking about the way God had things in the garden. And you start saying, you're reading all these animals and stuff like that and how God is creating them and Adam is naming them and stuff like that. And the Bible doesn't say anything about the animals fighting with each other or trying to kill each other or anything like that.
No hierarchy.
You explain this to your kid. No hierarchy. You know what I'm saying? You're explaining to your kid the reality that God had in the beginning, and everything is different from what they see. So it diverges in every way. I mean, it's completely divergent. It's a totally different reality. You start there, and now you're sort of retraining your child to think about what they see as not being the ultimate thing. Like there's this other thing that God had in mind, a thing he's going to take us back to actually when we get to heaven and when we come back to the earth made new. You're talking in that context, and now you introduce this sex thing, which you find right there in Genesis 1.
Oh, yeah.
You just say, God created the husband and wife in the garden, and he gave them this command, be fruitful and multiply. Do you know what that means, son? Do you know what that means, daughter? And you just explain exactly what that is. And you might pivot shortly after that to some kind of science book where you're talking about it from an anatomy and physiology kind of standpoint. And by the way, April, as an elementary school teacher, gives advice about how early you probably need to be doing this with your kids. And people are surprised at how early you should probably be having this conversation.
Far earlier than anybody.
What would you say?
I was just saying far earlier than anybody really does. But I would love to hear that age. What age is it?
Well, it's so funny because it's gone down as the years have gone by. They're learning so fast, so much earlier. But I would say 7.
Yeah.
I mean, I would. I would say 7.
She used to say 9. She used to say 9 or 10 for years.
I did.
But now it's like that's too late. It's like at 7, they're now being introduced to pornography. And you don't want for them to be learning everything about this subject from the world. So you got to get in there before the world does. So now it's like you're trying to do it before they do it.
And so some parents we've suggested this, and they're like, oh, well, they're going to go to school and tell their friends this, And so I get that. You don't want your child to get a note sent home saying they talk about sex to the kids. I get that. But
which they're doing, whether you acknowledge it or not.
Right. Exactly.
Great point. Without your help,
and they'll come out and say, "Hey, God created it," but I say, you could say, this is a conversation that we have at home. You can make that clear as much as you can, but have that conversation. You can't worry about what might come next. You gotta get proactive.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Because it's really bad these days, especially in schools.
Man, it sounds like we might have to have them come back.
We got to get you guys back.
We got to talk about
this.
That
is so good,
impactful.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So as we're kind of rounding into home base, give us kind of what just give us maybe 2 or 3 more just good habits, just practices, just things that we need to be intentional with as we. All right. So you both give us one. Just as we wrap up.
And I are going to give you ones from the male and female perspective. Actually, are you going to?
No.
Okay, go ahead. All right. I'm going to talk about something. I'm going to try to help out my homies on this.
Come on.
All right. Help out the brothers.
Brother, we need all the
help
help
out the
we can
homies.
get. All the help we can get, Doc. All the help. Yeah.
I'm going to steal yours.
Okay, go ahead.
I might steal it. I don't know. But anyway, I think that the focus should be satisfying your spouse.
Oh, that wasn't what I was going to say. That's
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
So that means that I'm going to go into sex thinking about how I'm going to satisfy him.
Okay. All right.
Period. What does he like? What do I know he like? I'm going to do that. That's my goal. I'm not here thinking about how I'm going to get mine. I'm here to think about how he's going to get his.
Yeah.
If we go in that way, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
If we both are going in that way,
Yeah.
there is no way you're not going to end satisfied.
Yeah.
And so what happens with that is next time when I'm tired and I really don't feel like it, and I say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and submit. Okay, I'm using that word because we should submit in the bedroom sometimes too. And I do believe that. There are times when I'm tired and I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to just go ahead and do this. Why? Because I remember being satisfied the last time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember being satisfied the last time. I'm not going in saying, it's not that great. Oh, man, I got to do this again. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now I'm going in tired. And then when it's over, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. You want that to be where you end with you're closer. There's more of a connection there because wow, he wanted to satisfy me, and I felt that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a good
So
word.
I think going in wanting to satisfy your spouse, and I think there may be some things that, and we talk about this, that you may not be comfortable with doing that your spouse might want initially, but I think that if it is, you feel like it is biblically okay, that's something that you might want to try to open yourself up to, every so often, to try to give that person what they're not necessarily needing, but what they like.
Good.
But we also say, if that is something that you really have a hard time because of whatever reason, that's off the table. We're not saying that you should do things you don't.
Even if it's biblically okay, we think there must be mutual consent, according to First Corinthians
7.
6.
No.
7. Thank you.
7.
1 Corinthians 7. Yes, 3 through 5. I can quote it for you right now. But yes, you're right. That mutual consent thing is a very important aspect of that. So I feel like now I need to piggyback a little bit off what April just said, because I think I need to help the wives out a little bit, because you just helped the husbands a lot just now.
That was a word. All right.
So
I didn't tell how women really can be satisfied every time,
right?
Because I'm not sure that this is
that might not be the
place for
forum,
that.
right? But, so let me just say,
Lord help us.
We'll have another.
We got like 3 episodes already right here.
We'll have to have an after 9 episode.
For subscribers
here's what I
only.
was gonna say, just to help with that, because I do think that's important. When you think about the male and female anatomy, there is something here that's sort of implied, and that is men are going to be statistically satisfied more often than women because of where the nerves for them to be sexually satisfied are located.
Yeah.
Where on the genitalia it's located. So it's almost impossible, not impossible, but almost. It's almost impossible for the husband to not be satisfied during a sexual encounter.
I just have to pause because I love how John can explain this in a way. I would just be saying it. I get that in an appropriate way. I love that about you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's the pastor in him.
Okay, so again, think about the female anatomy. It's different in that one way, that where the nerve cluster that needs to be stimulated is located, it is not located in a convenient spot. In other words, if you as a husband just go through with the sex act without thinking it through and making sure that you're going to be satisfying your wife, she may not be satisfied most of the time. It's like you literally have to be deliberate about satisfying your wife because of where her nerve center is located. And I think that is suggestive in a world that is dominated by men. And I think God designed the female anatomy in a way that the husband, in order to satisfy his wife, literally has to serve her. I'm going to have to serve you in the bedroom and be deliberate. My wife doesn't have to do much. All she has to do is make sure we actually did it, and I'm probably going to be satisfied.
Right.
But in order for her to be satisfied, I've got to be deliberate about that thing. I've got to know some things about her anatomy, and this is where this whole thing comes in that she's talking about.
I got to know where stuff is located.
She may need to show me. She may need to guide me a little bit as a tour guide for the first time or two. But after a while, I'm going to know her anatomy better than she does, and now when it comes time, I'm going to make sure, because by the way, 1 Corinthians 7 basically is your job description. The Bible says the husband must fulfill his marital duty to his wife. It's basically saying your job description is to make sure your wife is satisfied when you have sex, and vice versa. That's our job description. That's what it means to be husband and wife.
That's why I should be going in. That's why I should be going in to satisfy.
Exactly. But that's hard though. This is hard. Now it's fun. It's not hard work. That's not fun. It has
it is fun.
Opens immediately. So do your homework.
It's not like cutting grass. No, it is. It's not like cutting.
So I have a feeling. I could be wrong. But I have a feeling this may be our most popular.
It might be not. It just, I think you're right.
Oh man, that's funny.
You said you're not a prophet.
I am today. Dr. John.
Can I add one more thing real quick before we go? Just one thing. It's kind of funny, but so wives actually have the ability, in my opinion, to push their husband's buttons very quickly, and that is by being deliberate with how they look when they come to bed. So we tend to be visual.
Help us, Doc.
So I've told many wives. We've said it on the show before.
And I really don't think that women should ignore this.
Yeah, it's
I think sometimes it's hard. We as women can respond with, please, or have an attitude about it. But the reality is that men are visual.
Yeah. So
and some women are.
That's true too. So I just give this little piece of advice, and I say, do things along this vein for your husband, and it'll make a tremendous difference. Don't come to bed in a bonnet or a scarf or something like that on a night when you're trying to be frisky. In fact, maybe that could be the clue that we're about to do something. When it's time to go to bed and you don't have your bonnet on, oh, okay.
It's about to be a whole lot of misinterpretation, sir.
I missed the cue, man.
Black women, to just buy a silk pillowcase. Silk pillowcase has the same sort of it won't pull your hair out, basically. You get one of those, and you don't have to actually go to bed in a scarf or a bonnet.
Well,
okay,
to an extent.
But the point is,
you're being intentional.
I'm just saying, think about that. When you know what I'm saying, when you're trying to be, when you're trying to make sure that your husband is satisfied, sometimes it begins beforehand with the visual. That's what I'm saying. Do something visually stimulating for him. And that's going to make him, I think, enjoy it even more. Because you know what? Just doing it is going to make him enjoy it. But how do you go to that next level? I think that's one.
And I would say for men, I'm going to piggyback off of what you're saying. What is happening way before the bedroom?
Way.
For men, it's 5 minutes before we lay down. For women, it's 5 hours.
Maybe even more.
Sometimes 24
Yeah.
hours.
More
You
than
know what I'm
that.
saying?
Sometimes
24.
it's in the morning.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could be in the middle of the day. You sent a text message out of the blue that said, "I can't wait to see you later." Something that simple can get us ready.
Yeah.
And again, we're not saying do these things so you can have. I mean,
We're not being transactional.
but I do think that there are times when you might be like, I want to get my spouse in the mood, so I'm going to do this. I think that's okay too. We have to give ourselves permission to do those things.
Without shame.
Yeah.
So hopefully what will happen is people will take notes, stop and pause, take notes, and apply some of this wisdom, some of this heat.
Heat habits.
Yeah.
Hashtag.
So
That's it right there. That's it.
I like
heat
that.
habits, yeah. So we want to thank Dr. John Nixon and his wife April Nixon for joining us for Breathe and heating things up.
Come on.
We appreciate that.
We enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having us on.
We appreciate, and we hope that this is just the first of
many.
We want to get a routine going with you guys and make you guys a part of our Breath of Life family. I think you guys have a lot to share, and we would love to kind of be a portal for you guys.
Absolutely.
We would love that.
Absolutely.
We want to come do it in person. We want to be at those mics that are over
Yes.
there.
Hey, we got you. We got you.
Yeah.
Next time.
Do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll do.
I'd advise folks to hydrate though before these conversations.
Yeah.
So for Pastor Debleaire Snell and for Pastor Kirk Nugent, I'm David Person. God bless you, and don't forget, no matter how challenging it may seem, you can keep it hot in your marriage if you stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. The opening theme was produced by David Person and James Bowman. James Bowman and Kelvin Wooten produced the closing theme. Special thanks to our broadcast partner, WJOU-FM Oakwood University Radio. Episodes of Breathe can be found on your favorite podcasting platforms. Please like them and share. Until next time, when life gets difficult, don't forget to breathe.